morning. Oh, wait,
Good
no, it's
morning.
not. Look at
Oh
us.
my
I'm so used to
gosh.
it. We're
I
doing it midday
know.
again. Things are
Th-
things are changing.
Things are changing, but it's good morning, good afternoon. It's all the same. So, good morning.
Yeah. How have you been?
I'm doing well, keeping busy, loving life, and trying to, work through the 104-degree heat. So, yes,
Ooh, we got the
getting
last
there.
month left, and then we're hitting some cool spots, we hope.
Oh, yes, absolutely, and no pun intended.
Well, last you and I chatted, and I know that I had a great conversation with Iggy last week, and so that was so much fun. But
Good.
last time you and I got to have the pleasure of doing this together, we sort of ended it with the promise kind of going into dreams just a little bit.
Yes.
We recognize that they are a part of the metaphysical world
Mhm.
in a lot
Absolutely.
of ways. But they're also, they're kind of different, right? Like if you were to remote view,
Mhm.
you couldn't, or maybe I'm wrong, help me understand. If you went and tried to remote view, you wouldn't access the same world as a dreamscape.
Not necessarily. You could on some levels, but they are different. The information comes from more than two different places usually.
And there's a how do I say this? If I were to remote view, I would say that we sort of step into the astral, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But
Absolutely through the remote view. Yes.
and we step into the astral though almost like in shamanic teaching, the middle world, the
Yes.
world
Well,
that is.
the world that is, the world that we live in, and the world that we kind of thrive through. And I say this thrive through because again, we have to live it. So we are very fully engaged in the middle world. Yes.
Yes. And then I would argue that maybe a dreamscape is almost like a pocket of consciousness that has creative tendencies that you can snap your fingers and suddenly a pizza's right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Where
There's many
that
things you
isn't.
can do in Dreamscape. Yes.
Yeah. And so I almost went to, it's almost like if there was a middle world, but you were the miniature god of it, so to speak. A
Oh, I
lot
like
of
that
that.
job. Sign me up.
Right. Well, a lot of people do sleep a lot, right? Through,
That's true.
but okay. So, and this topic I love, but I also am cautious about because people, there's a lot of omens that people feel are in dreams. And sometimes it is that, and sometimes it's not.
Right. Sometimes it's just stress.
Yeah.
Stress doing stressful things. Yeah.
What would you,
Well, oftentimes they help us to eliminate things that are really bothering us. When we're able to work through something that's stressful, it does oftentimes come out during a dream. Then we're able to kind of overcome it and find a different solution in the waking hours for it. So, dreams they have their purpose, they have their value. There are dreams that are just, again, to break up stress and monotony, and other dreams are a bit of the intuitive side. I hate to say it as omens and all of that, but they really are on some level.
one of the most famous dreams in
Mhm.
literature would have been the dream of Cassandra, the princess of
Yes,
Troy, right?
yes,
And
that is
she
true.
dreamed of a baby that being born and running through the streets of Troy. And as he ran, everything was aflame. Whatever he
Yes,
touched turned to fire.
right.
Arguably, that was a very omen heavy dream.
You bet. Oh my heavens. It would certainly be that. And again, we do recognize that omens and premonitions tend to come during a dreamlike state. So they do have a place in that part of our rest. When we are deep in the REM sleep, that's when we are least likely to involve ourselves on a more conscious effort, intuitive effort, and intellectual effort.
Do you feel that there are, we talk about bloodlines, we talk about gifts a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find often that there are just certain bloodlines or it's almost like if someone's gifted or not, if they have the propensity, that they lean more almost like gifted they would be much more likely to receive metaphysical information in a dreamscape than say somebody who didn't believe in any, do you kind of see what I'm trying to ask? I'm sorry.
I just see where you're heading with that question.
Not my most eloquent day.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think it's Monday again. Somehow it's Monday. Now, I do understand what you're saying, but I also want to say that we would think that to be the truth in the case. But really, anyone has the ability to go into that type of state of mind, whether you're intuitive or not. It's the intuitive side of the population that would tend to look at that dream as a message. It's the side that doesn't really rely on intuition, that's not sure what the metaphysical world is like, and may even be a little afraid of it. They are least likely to go and say, oh, I had a dream XYZ about this dream, and I think it's a premonition or an omen. So it's kind of a yes and no. You don't have to be intuitive to have very intuitive dreams. But if you are intuitive, you have a better understanding of what the dreams represent. Does that make sense?
Yes. And if you have a dream about a wolf, you might intuit that it's a friend of yours, whereas somebody else might just say, well, I live in a wooded area and there's wolves everywhere.
Right, exactly. Or you'll have another subset that'll say, I had this big scary wolf and I don't know if Little Red Riding Hood's involved or what's going on.
And now what do you think about, real quick, random, sorry, ADD
You're
moment.
fine. Hey, that's what this is about. Let's get real. I love it.
So Jake and I watched the Netflix thing on the dog behaviors. It was mainly
fun.
It was so cute, but I thought that was so awesome when they were kind of going down the genealogy of how wolves wound up and all the larger, like the macro animals of the past. Mm-hmm. They said the two that survived were the wolves and the bears. They just got smaller. I was like, oh, that's awesome. We made it.
I love it. We made it. Oh my gosh. And here we are today. We look a little bit different, but here we are today.
I wanted to tell you about that. I thought it was so cute. One topic that has always been interesting to me from a young age, and then, never did anything with it, but lucid dreaming. And I know a lot of people are very interested in this. They also are very interested in doing it.
Yes.
And, knowing how to do it is above my gnosis, honestly. But what are your thoughts on lucid dreams? How do some people have that and some people just don't?
Well, there is a school of thought on lucid dreaming that it can be a hormonal response. They find that more teenage girls have lucid dreaming. It can also be something that starts during the teenage years. It can be driven by hormones. Believe it or not, it's a dream state during REM sleep that gets hyper reactive. And so,
remember when we talked about traveler entities?
Yes.
That is the other thing that you've shared with me that has any relationship at all with hormones, usually in teens.
Yes.
So just stab in the dark, because we've not ever talked about this before. Is it like a creative power? Like what? Like if you can take control of a dream and create in this metaphysical place, and it also it tracks energies that cannot create for themselves. Is that the thing? Because we've come into a place where now we can bear life, or not really? I'm pairing things together, but I recognize,
and it's okay to pair it together because in some ways there's validity to that. I kind of look at it from a different standpoint. I look at it like babies can see spirits because they've been told that why not, right? So they can see angels, they can see energies, they stare at them all the time. We get to teenagehood, especially as women, because of the estrogen, and we are more apt to have lucid dreaming. We're more apt to experience astral travel too, because we are, I don't want to say we're a bit more imaginative. That's not really what that is. But for whatever reason, whether it's physiological or however it plays out, we have better access, I'm going to call it better access, to another higher functioning energy. That doesn't mean that males don't have lucid dreams. Some men have a lot of good, solid lucid dreaming. Oftentimes omens, again, premonitions come from that part of the dream state as well. Or they can, I should say. They can come from that state. But I will also share with you, people have to keep in mind that lucid dreaming is not all what it's cracked up to be. Sometimes lucid dreaming is beautiful and it's like part of astral travel and you feel like you are, just a part of everything and you can hear everything and you can sense everything. And it's so much that you're awake that you can't imagine that you're still in bed. But I also know that and much like, anything in life, there's a flip side of the coin. And there are instances in that type of lucid dreaming where we get bad messages. We get menacing messages. We feel like we can't move. We feel like the paralysis of which is another type of dream state. We can incorporate that paralysis in the lucid dreaming. And now we're fully engaged, fully aware, but we can't move a muscle. And it can go sideways pretty quickly, especially if there's something that we deem as fearful or scary or menacing.
I love our conversations because they just go everywhere.
They do go everywhere. I love it.
I have come to you, never of fear, frankly, but thanks to you, thanks to our training. I don't have any fear around it anymore. But the sleep paralysis thing kind of cropped up in my life around 24, 25. I don't remember it in childhood. If it was there, it was repressed. But back then, before I met you and before I knew, it was the most, and people write about this too, so it seems to be a shared experience. It is the most scary, and it truly feels dark. It feels not just like, oh, I can't move and I'm trapped, but that there's also something enjoying that, wanting that, promoting that.
Right, predatory, something predatory to it sometimes.
Do you feel that, and obviously we know dark energies, they're not really that strong, so they're very opportunistic.
Yes.
The reality is.
Right.
Do you think that that's why that is because there's an energy that recognizes you're kind of stuck between the worlds, and so that makes you sort of out of power in both sides? And so then they just come and they're like, well, let me taunt this situation that I didn't do anything to create, which is hilarious to me.
Well, and I'm going to agree with that. Now, I know that there'll be those out there in the community that will say, no, we're going to take it a step more deeply, step deeper, and go into, again, the psychological profile of lucid dreaming, because there's always going to be a scientific approach to it. But for us here as a metaphysicians, boy, that's a hard word to say twice, so I won't. We recognize that it is when we feel most vulnerable. I know for me personally, when I was going through a bout of lucid dreaming, it was when I was younger, but also during the time, through the hormonal stages, when you're getting ready to have your period, or, you're coming off from that there was a heightened state of connection in lucid dreaming. And they were never fun. It wasn't like I was having a blast with all these energies that were checking me out. It was, in fact, one of them very specifically would whisper in my ear, and I hated that. I don't like anything whispering in my ear. I always kind of keep it a little bit further away. And calling me such things as, we'll call it a beach just for all purposes. And I would hear that, and I would try to break out of it. But it, again, menacing in its own way, but also, a threat really tends to just be that. It's just something to gain power in recognition.
Well, I will say the last 2 times it has happened, and I've shared a million times, I'm a believer in a higher entity. I'm a believer in things of that nature.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
I don't have a background with going to the Bible, going to church a ton. In all the times that I've experienced it, lucid dreaming, I don't know why, I just start speaking about God, I don't know why, and it is the fastest thing. It's almost like it responds to that. It's like, oh, why are you bringing that up? Whereas before, I have tried to just combat it and just been like, get out of my house. Like, you can't do anything. Not taunting, but maybe. And it takes a lot longer. I can still do it. Obviously, I still break out. But when I try to just logic through, I'm stronger than you, all these things, it feels like it takes a second. And lately,
yes.
Why is that just,
No, it's curious, isn't it? Think about what we just said. And again, we're very non-denominational. We love you all. We don't care where your mindset is. As long as you don't harm anyone, we're good, and we're on board with your belief system. But it is curious, and I've noticed that too. It's kind of like, and I can speak for myself, that way I won't get, tomatoes thrown at the screen, right? That, I can say, okay, well, a brick and mortar to me isn't religion or God, and be poo-pooed by all of that. and then in the same breath be begging for God to come save me in an instant when I'm having those struggles. And what's very curious and very real is that it does seem to work better.
Isn't that unique?
It just does. It
And
is.
the last time I did that, which was maybe a month ago, it wasn't too long ago, because
Mm-hmm.
it usually I get stuck. My paralysis is when I'm taking a nap, because it's almost like I know I
Yes.
shouldn't be, or I should be in the waking world, and then as I fall asleep in this
Mm-hmm.
weird, that's when it happens. So it kind of
Right.
scares me from trying to take naps, honestly. Never at night. I don't know why. Knock on wood.
Isn't
But
that curious? But oftentimes we hear that lucid dreaming is during the day. It's during those cat naps. Makes you
that's
wonder.
fascinating. I did not
It
know that.
is.
Well, so we'll just kind of put a pin on that, but I did think it was interesting. Like, I'll literally just say, you know, I mean, this makes me sound like this makes me feel like a fake religion, but like I'm covered in the blood of Jesus Christ. And you're just thinking, I don't even
Absolutely.
know that I know what that really means. But yet the thing that I feel like it's kind of like being taunting seems to.
Yes.
That's weird. I don't know. So
And
strange.
again, we're not making light of any of these
No.
words, these verbiages, these sayings, these passages. We're really not. We're actually giving credence to it because I'll be darned, it
Yes.
does work.
And
It
I'm
does work.
speaking of ignorance of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like how I think it's fascinating because, intention's everything in a lot of ways, metaphysically.
Yes.
And yet these words that I have no real connection to historically, why do they just crop to my head? So it's been interesting. That very
Well, and again, we're not going off in a religious sector here, but
Yeah.
but think of it from the perspectiveness. If we are theoretically of God and we are made in God's image, well, then that phrase itself should be a powerhouse. It's also coming from God, but from us if we're also built in the image. So it should be the most direct route to getting us out of a bad situation.
Well, we've talked about in your book, I can't remember how specific in your book, but we've talked about it for sure on the podcast. Whenever that energy confronted you by the bread rack and tried to coax you into a deal, right?
Very, very real. That was so scary.
And you were awake for it.
Yes.
The reason I bring it up is because I've shared this with you privately. I feel that I've only ever had one offer of any nature at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it was in a lucid dream state.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody looked like they did, right? Because there was a character in my dream that it didn't really make sense and was a public figure. But the words that were offered to me were very very pointed and deal oriented and blah, blah, blah. So, but I wonder if that offer had to have happened in a lucid state because my consent had to have been real for it to be a deal, correct? Right?
To be a deal.
What I mean?
That's exactly right.
And I always remembered that. I mean, I remember that dream now. I remember most of the lucid dreams. So it's almost like they go into a different part of your memory bank too.
Oh, I agree with that. Absolutely. And so again, it gives us, expands the conversation on a lucid dreaming and into the direction of, well, what I experienced, was that considered still a lucid dream? I was lucid, except I was in an awakened state, but I was also in a traumatized state.
Yeah, you were very distanced from yourself.
Right. So can we have, an upright lucid dream moment?
I would, daydreams.
Because I will tell you that part of that, I could also visualize myself in a nightgown, and I wasn't standing in the store in a nightgown, right?
Right.
When I was said, you can go, I will take over, you can go. Well, we had a huge snowstorm, but I could visualize what they were telling me, as if I was right there in that moment, that very surreal moment of, it wouldn't be cold, it wouldn't be anything. I would just disappear and be gone.
How weird.
It was extremely weird. I'll never forget that. People wonder where we get, why we get to the place in our life where we do, where we can teach, this sort of thing, or have such just passion for it. Well, oftentimes it comes on the heels of experiences. And you've had your share of experiences, and I've had my share of experiences. So I will tell you, for those that don't really agree, or this doesn't jive with them, I'm perfectly fine with that reaction. But I also want to tell you, this is so normal and so real to someone who has had a lot of journeys of spirit.
And, I mean, in defense of us also, the reality is we bring up the topics that hit or our life experiences that address these topics, but the majority of our life is quite normative. Maybe not
Yes.
you and I, because we do work with spirit a little bit more than maybe the average. But if we
Yes.
didn't, we'd live pretty mundane. We would have an experience of note maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months. But it's just because of what we do, maybe it's a little bit more regular.
So what you're saying is the average person doesn't get this type of communication every hour. So
I
that
don't
doesn't
think
happen.
so, and I think,
Wow.
well, I think I'm going to be human too. It was very almost disappointing whenever I went into training with you, and I'm thinking, I'm going to have 5 best friends because they're going to be my guides and we're going to talk all the time, and I'm going to see the truth off of everybody, because and then you just
Yes.
realize, no, people convincingly lie to you all the time, like you miss stuff. Your guides are so frustrated because you don't listen, like it's still true.
It's true.
We don't step into such a new world.
No,
But maybe we
that's
stop a
true.
little bit when we feel it. We recognize, oh, did something just enter the room? Like little things like that.
Yes. And and that's well stated, because it is something. And I know there are plenty of people out there that wonder about this, because I get asked this all the time. If you hear things most regularly, and you can go around every day and you've got talking to your guide, talking to my guide, talking to grandma, talking to all these people, how do you cope? How do you get the voices out of your head? And I'm going to tell you what we have also found out, and Sterling, I think I could speak for you on this instance as well, is that we do have a shut off valve. It's not something that we do, like, okay, now we're shutting off the communication, and tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. we'll talk again. It's more of, okay, enough and move on, enough and move on. And we hear it, okay, enough and move on. So it is just something that's just naturally part of our existence in the way
That
we
is
look at
an
things.
excellent point, because I will say that's such a good point, because if I have a lucid dream and I spend the rest of the day thinking about, or I'm sorry, paralysis, then I spend the rest of my day thinking about that paralytic situation, that's a different existence than what we choose to do.
It's an altered state. It certainly is. And perhaps maybe that's what this all goes to. If we look at how remarkable the brain is, and we look at that we have not even studied, more than just a few percent of the brain's mass, its capabilities. Think how much further and how much we can stretch out into understanding and have
Mm-hmm.
as experiences, and just using a little bit of what we know to be used. I know that lucid dreams are real. I know that there's also, again, the speculation of what is reality. So we could go down that rabbit hole.
Oh boy.
But in the day to day, we recognize they are real. A lucid
Mm-hmm.
dream, whether it's menacing, whether it's memorable in a good, positive way, whatever it may be, lucid dreams do occur, do happen. They happen in a subset of people more so than others in a lot of ways. I've taught several dream classes, and I will tell you, I don't hear about lucid dreaming from as many men as women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't just jump in with the speculation it's the estrogen that's driving force, but I do see, and it could be many, many, many different things. It may just be the way that we process information. We do, and no matter what anyone wants to go in and say, we do have certain methodologies that are just a little bit different from those with testosterone
Mm-hmm.
versus estrogen.
And if you want to go into the spiritual stuff, there's an argument to suggest that males are of the sun, of the masculine, of the material,
Of the
and
material, the
women
masculine.
are of the unseen and the felt, but the unknown, sort of that moon energy, right?
That's right.
If the men are the sun, the women are the moon, and the moons are that's sort of the hidden.
That's right. That's the mysticism.
Yeah, and so that would make sense, because we have there seems to be this duality guideline in the matrix that we live in now, and it does have women are much better at intuitive things, men are much better at putting a thought form into the future and then kind of moving people out of the way if they're so driven. They have more control of moving things in the physical world.
In the physical world. And I agree with that. And there'll be those of you, and I'm perfectly fine on the other side of this podcast, that will disagree. And I just say, let's disagree. That's perfectly fine. Agree to disagree. And that's another reason why I'm so grateful that there are such things as other lives, past lives, because we don't want to have all the fun, right? We don't want to, have all the fun. So I know in many lifetimes I've come back as male so that I can hang out with the sun as well and learn from that side of experiences. And I feel quite certain, as again in limited form. Obviously, I can't run back and check your past life, 100% guarantee. But I can almost guarantee. Let me rephrase that: that you probably have come back learning other things. So you've probably been male, you've probably been female, or if you were here as male, you've probably been able to go the gamut of understanding and experiences. So lucid dreams is just a little bit, it's just like a little nugget that we can have in the I don't want to say in the awakening world necessarily, but in the sleep rest cycles.
There was one word from my training that I remember. I just wanted to touch on this. How would you define and this is your phrase, I've never heard it before you, but what would you say that a dream weaver is?
And I love the dream weavers. A dream weaver, and I'll tell you, maybe I became a dream weaver. Maybe I coined the phrase. I have actually seen it elsewhere. I meditated one day to get more information about it. And, I do, and I've said this periodically, and I truly mean it. I try to keep myself out of the books, keep myself out of information, because when I get something, I want it to be authentic. I don't want to be something I read on page 38 of, the last 45 books I've read. So I do keep myself in a very ignorant state, and I'm happy to say that. Okay, I'm not going.
Which is hysterical because you're the most knowing individual in my life.
Well, you're very kind, and I appreciate any compliment I can get. Trust me. But
it's so true.
But I recognize that my best information comes when I come from a pure source, where I get it from what we call source, whether that be God, universe, guides, whomever, but through my team. And a dream weaver is someone that could go in and methodically clean up a dream, can change dreams. We try not to intervene or intercept other people's dreams. We have to be careful of that because there's free will that we're kind of, teeter-tottering on. But as a dream weaver, if I'm having a nightmare, I had so many nightmares growing up. Dear God, I spent most of my early age screaming. So I had to learn a different coping style, if nothing else. And so I learned early on, and then I kind of professed it into a term as an adult, that by dream weaving, I could go in the dream if I was being chased, which is very common in trauma, being chased, being victimized, being hurt, being set apart. I could go in there and quit and say, no, no, you keep chasing me, I'm going to turn around and chase you. And I could see a change. I could see things coming out better. And then another way of explaining it, say I'm in a dark alley in this dream state, and I'm afraid and I'm lost and I'm getting scared and I can feel the adrenaline rushes even in the REM sleep, then I can all of a sudden say, no, turn the lights on and bring me a cotton candy machine out of nowhere and manifest a whole different scenario so that I give myself enough time to wake up. A dream weaver can also put a different spin on the end of dreams. How many dreams have we had where we wake up just as something yucky is happening, right? Well, it doesn't mean that we just, woke up and now we don't have to worry about the yucky. Oh, look at us, we saved ourselves. Well, no, because the yucky just kind of woke us up. So we're still in a mindset that something didn't go well. So I've taught myself to go into a light meditative state of sleep, go back into that dream state and correct it, modify it, change the program. And I've had one recently where, I love the water, but I'm not a strong swimmer. And I was on this big ship and the waves started getting a little chaotic and I was afraid I was going to fall. So it was very, very upsetting to me. Topsy-turviness. Out of control, right? And that's one thing I don't like to be, is out of control. No, so I literally said, because I felt that was coming up from this dream, because you've heard the alarm go off, your 5-minute warning. I have a kitchen timer, so I get a 5-minute warning, like, get your butt up kind of thing. But I'm like, no, change it now. And that's what I'll say. I'm very straightforward. I don't mix words. Let's change it up. And okay, it's very calm and beautiful. Oh, bring a seagull. There's a seagull. Oh, I love seagulls. Look at that. Oh, hear the seagull. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's time to get up now. That's dream weaving. Now, we also dream weave into other people's dreams. And I do that sometimes, and I do that. And sometimes I do it more than I want to admit. Because I've had several people over the past several years, probably, when I say several, I'm saying probably 100 or more, that have said, Terri, why did you come into my dream last night? You came and visited me. Why did I have a dream about you last night? I haven't seen you in 2 years and I had a dream about you. And curiously enough, I remember sitting with someone and talking and doing a reading in my sleep.
And Brian says that.
Yeah, Brian says, you talk all night long. You're doing work. You're busy. And I literally feel it, because when I get up, to go pee, and as you get older, you'll see that that's a plural, many times. It changes the whole nature of sleeping. That I will literally say, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom. I'll come back.
That's hilarious.
And I go and I come back and go back into whatever it is I'm doing. And I've had people say, you came to my dream and you told me it was going to be okay. And so the things I was worried about, so thank you. And I'll be like, oh, you're welcome. I'm thinking, was that you? I didn't know that was you. I just knew it was somebody. I usually don't know who it is, but I can kind of feel their vibe later. Like I'll know someone's going to reach out to me, and it's usually the person that's had the dream.
Well, a couple of things just populated real quick, so I'll run through them real fast, because one of them I just want to tell you, because I think it's funny and we like pizza.
We love pizza.
The only time, so it was right after our class about dreams 3-4 years ago, whenever that was. I can't believe how fast time is going.
I know.
And I had a dream. It wasn't really bad, nor was it scary, but there was this weird moment where I'd ordered this pizza. I think people are around, and I'm a little bit miserly, so I'm like, I paid for this pizza.
You want this pizza.
And then it fell on the ground face down, like top down.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have just been because we just had that class or something. And I thought, no. And I don't remember if I woke up and did it, or if I just kind of reset right to the point before it happened.
Yep.
And I saved the pizza. And I thought, oh my gosh. But that's the only time I remember since then.
It works. And it does work. It does work. I do that too, yes. Especially with pizza.
The other thing I thought, and maybe it was because, spirit is an amazing thing, and it prepares, my guides help me out. But in a weird way, last night, I had dreams that I don't think their motif is important necessarily.
Right.
Or I think I already kind of understand what they were. So I'm not sitting here thinking this is an omen. But I felt so bad for Jake, but I woke up 3, if not 2 for sure, 3 maybe, like sobbing. Just very crying. And then, but no, like I just kind of had to come down from that, and then I would fall back asleep, and then it would sort of happen again. So I think I'm just kind of maybe in a little bit stressed out. Plus yesterday I had the longest day ever and very little sleep.
That will do it too.
But the reason I mention it is not to say, oh, this is a deep message and something's really wrong in my life and I need to change everything, because why would I wake up sobbing in my dreams? Whereas the thing I actually think could be true is I have a lot of energy, and you do too. We there's no way we don't, for us to have the control that we have in the topics of energy.
Yes.
So, when there is emotional activity, I'm not surprised that I wasn't able to keep it just in the dreamscape.
Right.
Just like you're maybe not capable, you have so much excess energy when you sleep, you seek out ways that you can help in an unconscious fashion.
Yes.
So, there's really dramatic dream experiences that still may not really have an omen-like mystical message, so much as you might just have a lot of energy or a lot of pent-up energy.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. 100% on board with that. Not every dream is going to give you this just, gobsmacking notion of change, or notion of, oh gosh, look at this. This is a new creation or new beginning. Sometimes you're just you're expelling stress. You're getting rid of emotions. You're just kind of grounding yourself. The tears, you're right, to contain that into a dream state. Sometimes it's just not. When you have big dreams and big tears and big energy, you have to let it release. It's not always going to be an omen. It's not always going to be a premonition. Sometimes we just go into a dream and we just have a rough night of just draining and getting rid of the yuck, letting it pass through us. And so, yes, I love the directions we can go with dreams, because it can be so intense and so, mind altering and, so much about the spirit world. Or we could simply recognize on some level, in some format, dream states can be just about healing from an ordinary human experience.
And, I started calling it kind of the washer dryer dreams.
I love that.
Where it's like, and I feel, when people ask me, what did my dream mean? I can count on one hand, maybe, when I felt led to say that there was some deep thing there.
Yeah.
And that's not a lot, considering how sure that these people are and so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I get the message very quickly that was a washer dryer.
Yes.
And just for a little bit of a sidebar, scientifically they talk about REM sleep. And then when you pair that with our modern, clinical psychology, they discuss basically we need the dreamscape, because it allows our brain to lay to rest things that are still, it's almost like an open tab. It's just allowing us to just close these tabs as we think about them and kind of order them in our mind.
Yes.
When you drink a ton, when you smoke marijuana and you do these things that you think are helping you sleep, it's compromising the most important aspect, which is the cleaning cycle, the washing and the drying. And so then you start having anxiety in your day and fears in your day, because you've got now a month and a half of pent up, unorganized thoughts, and your brain's really trying to know where to put that memory and what to do with it. And you're not really having the ability to, because your REM is so compromised.
Exactly.
So I say that to say, everyone's got their free will, but, we do maybe need to take a little bit of a break sometimes and get real sleep, because our mental will suffer.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so interesting to me, if you look at the sleep cycles themselves, we're actually in a state of REM for a very short period based on all the different stages. And REM is our restorative sleep. So if you're in bed for 6 hours and you've gotten 25 minutes of REM sleep, that's your restorative sleep.
And I follow a lot of fitness, keeping up with what's being said new about the gym and stuff, because I'm in the gym a lot. They even now recognize that there's correlation between REM sleep and muscle recovery.
Yes.
So it seems holistically healing.
Very much so. Very much so. And, for all of you wonderful folks out there, there's so many apps that can help give you maybe not 100% accuracy, but give you, kind of a direction of where to go to see how well you're sleeping, to see how many hours you're actually in a state of slumber. What is REM sleep? What is deep sleep versus light sleep? How many tosses and turns are you making for an evening? So you can get a better understanding. I mean, sleep itself has its own whole topic. I mean, we would like to believe that we just close our eyes and there we go into this magical place of nothingness. But for many of us, sleep state is more active than day sleep. Yes.
I literally track. I use Pillow.
I use a Samson app, a health app.
Oh, nice.
It has that on there as well. A little plug-in for Samson. Don't forget it's in the big picture. We'll see you.
Right. We'll see you on the flip side.
On the flip side, the other side of the news. Figure we put the plugs out now, and eventually someone will go, I heard that.
Yes. But it is important, and not even in a metaphysical way.
And that's true. There's just so much. We could spend days and days and weeks just taking, the development of sleep and the development of the studies around sleep, taking the metaphysical and pulling it out of the physiological side of it, all of the scientific ways versus the spiritual ways. And we could have a heyday. We could make an entire podcast just on, sleep versus,
The two people that don't sleep at all having a
exactly.
podcast about sleep.
I know,
It'd be
isn't that
amazing.
crazy? I know.
We're
Oh
both
my
hardcore
gosh.
insomnia addicts. It's a problem.
It's so funny, and it's so true. I did the other day. Busy, and if you have a busy day, sometimes it is hard to shut down that busy day into the evening. And and I do a lot of work at night. I don't know who I really help, obviously, because I'm not leaving my bed, but I'm talking a lot, right? But it was funny because when I was teasing earlier about getting up and saying, "Excuse me, I'm going to the restroom. I'll be back." I did that the other night, and as I'm coming back to the restroom, I'm still in this little state of, little stupor there. And I was like, oh, maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe I should not say that I'm going to the restroom. Maybe I should just excuse myself for a minute. Okay, get yourself together. You've got to go talk to them again.
Oh my goodness.
And the restroom, the bathroom is not that far away from where my bed is. So that was a lot of conversation in a short little bit of walk.
Mm-hmm.
But we recognize that we do take a lot of our day to our night. For the good, the bad, and the indifferent. We just do.
And now, with that said, we're about to confuse the audience entirely.
Oh, let's do that. I like that the best.
Because I know we just said the majority of it is not this, but we do have to recognize that it is also a place where omens, where communication from loved ones, living and dead, can occur.
Yes.
So where,
and the boogeyman.
Right, well, correct, unfortunately, yeah. The good, the bad, the ugly, like you said, right? How would you say it for the modern, like the non-intuitive?
Okay.
What are cues that you would recognize to say, oh, maybe this is grandma?
Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll get for people that are not really metaphysical, that don't have the deeper spiritual connections, that have lost someone in the spirit world, but doesn't really think about how to connect to them on any real basis. They're just kind of, miss them. A sense of smell, smelling a perfume, smelling something in the room is a big one. I hear that one a lot.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's like the only one I know that wears gardenia perfume is my grandma. Or all of a sudden now we're smelling, the pipe smoke from dad or granddad or uncle or whomever it may be, a spouse. And we can get that sensation in a dream state. Oftentimes it's hard for us to know because we can have these states of dreams in the lucid state, of course, so that we get even more feedback. Not only do we smell the pipe, but we can see them, we can feel them. I know there are plenty of people out there that have had an experience, and it's an anomaly of someone sitting on the bed with them. We probably at least, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I've had at least one of them. Most people have had at least one experience. Well, we could let our minds go in all different directions and go, oh my gosh, that's the boogeyman. Or we can go a little further and allow it to occur and then see where it takes us. Maybe then next is the smell of the pipe or the smell of the perfume. Or we do tend to see more full body apparitions in dream state. Because again, we're in
their world more than they're in ours.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
easier
right.
to do for them.
And so we do see that there are people that have never really had that experience, that has actually been what opened their eyes and created the curiosity between the now and the spiritual side of now. So it's very curious, but we do have loved ones that pop in. We know that they come to us because it is a restful state. Typically, we're ready and quiet and still. It's not hectic and frenzy. We're not trying to get the kids off to school or trying to get dinner made or go to work. So we're in a state of more awareness. But we're also in a state of slumber, which makes it a little bit kind of balanced between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. And so oftentimes our loved ones will visit us in that state of being.
Well, and I was just reminded as you were talking, it kind of got airdropped in my head, how often you can't discern it.
No.
So like you have a dream, it's grandma, she's saying how much she loves you, how proud she is of you. You've never dreamed of your grandma ever. And then 2 days later, she passes.
Yes.
So, the reality is it's not like they come and they put a big banner that says, hey, this is important. Like they're doing their best.
That's right.
So that is the other thing I would say too is when you can remember something word for word. That's pretty rare for most people.
That's pretty rare. It does happen. Sometimes there will be a message that needs to be given. And we do also see that happening. That's why I never got into the school of thought that, oh, you've got to wait at least 6 months to a year to talk to those on the other side. I've waited, an hour and had them come to me and go, hey, I need you to tell somebody something.
Interesting.
And so, again, it is really just about the frequency of energy. It's about how well they connect. If you're a heavy sleeper, they could be sitting in your bed going, hey, wake up, knowing that they couldn't wake you up for school when you were, when you were living in their house, when you were a child, and they're in the same boat now, right? So we do get a lot of visitations.
Well, that makes me curious about something now, because I thought, well, I guess that's a different conversation maybe for another day, but about when they're not good at speaking in spirit right after they pass, right? So it seems like there's a 3 or 4 day window where they can they have this oomph of energy. They can kind of appear to the loved ones.
Yes.
But then is there not a time where they have to, like with my dad, like his mom had to come and help him communicate.
Right.
And so there is like a little bit of a time gap. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a time gap, because we look at things as increments of time. We recognize in the spiritual realms, time is different. It doesn't go into the past, present, or future. It doesn't have, the clock ticking 60 seconds in a minute. We're not quite sure how it's created, but we recognize it's different. But we also know that usually those that have just recently crossed don't really know what to say, because all of a sudden someone that they've cherished and missed is now, going like this to them. And they're like, no, I'm not going. Because then they're making sense of the fact that they may no longer be in the living world. And so there is a little bit of that disconnect for a while. But sometimes in the disconnect, there's also an intensity. And an intensity can be, I had someone during my circle last night. I did a mediumship circle. And I had someone who was not even related to one of the people that was in attendance come in, because she knew she was good friends with this person's family member. And the message was, I just passed, but the paperwork you're looking for is upstairs. I put it in the closet. It's on the top shelf. You got to get this too. It was like going, tell my uncle, this, because his wife needs to know, And so it was kind of like handed through. It was kind of the baton, or as I call it, kind of the relay race, handing the baton. So we do see that there are some urgencies in the spirit world, especially in the early stages of basically of crossing, where they're more vocal, because there's a lot just to a heightened state of energy. But you're right. Oftentimes they come to you. And they're still kind of dazed and confused a little bit. And they do oftentimes come with a loved one that I call it coerce or convince, needs to come with them. Like, come on, let's go. We're going to go check it out. I don't know how to come back, so you're coming with me. And I do see that when I do mediumship work.
So man, that's so interesting. When we'll have to dive into that soon. But back to smelling, remembering things word for word.
Yes.
There's almost kind of a thing, I would say, most of us wake up and, we remember parts of the dream maybe, but sometimes if you close your eyes and you think, was there a bolded out part? Right. If everything else is hazy and there's one part that it's almost like, because whoever's delivering the message, it's almost like they try to leave markers to remember that part.
They do. That's exactly right.
They're invested in you remembering it too, because they recognize there's a chance you won't. That's the nature of it.
And they usually will give you information, little nuggets of information that will help you to associate that information to who it belongs to, who would have done that in the first place. And, along the same lines, again, the other side of that, and we're not going to delve too deep into, the boogeyman. That'll be a whole different class for that. And that might be around Halloween.
Ooh, that'd be interesting. Let's do it. That could
be fun. Maybe we'll interview Stephen on that one, or Stephen Taylor.
Yes.
He can talk about all the
Halloween podcast.
Yeah, oh boy, wouldn't that be interesting? We may have to do that, listeners. If you like that idea, you need to tell us. But that'd be interesting. But what I also see, and I see this not frequently, but often enough for me to remember to mention it to you. I have clients that'll sit in front of me and they'll be like, I think I have a succubus or an incubus. And those are just bad energies that are a little bit more sexual in nature. They kind of go after the men or the women, depending on which flavor they are. And it's just, that's a whole nother story too. But, and I'll say to these clients, what makes you think that's what it is? Well, it's so intense. It's right in my face. They don't try anything. It's not like they're groping me or anything, but they're right there and they're right in my face, and it can't be anything but. And I've literally said to someone, maybe it's grandma on a bad hair day. You don't know who you've got. You've got to be, ready to understand that it could be many different other things. But I do feel that there is a subset of people that want to feel they're being haunted. And they want to feel that it's the boogeyman. And they want to feel the adrenaline rush of now they have to conquer this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I suggested those people, and it may, could be percentage of them could be just what they're asking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, when the loved one comes, it doesn't always mean that you're going to go like, oh, this is my kumbaya moment. I'm so happy, Grandma. I will see you in my wakening hours. Talk to you soon. But more of, wow, I just saw someone in my room and I think it's my loved one. It can be a little startling.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, none of this is perfect, right? Like, like grandma's doing her best. She's not trying to scare you. No. Now she's set her granddaughter on a path of thinking that she's haunted. Like mistakes happen. This is not a precise art for either side of the veil, so to speak.
No. And it's funny. I just got a vision in my own head. It just kind of trailed off as you were saying that for a second. Because I know I'm coming back. I just don't know how I'm just going to make it a lot of fun. Let me put it that way. I can see going, hello.
You're like, listen, here's my time to shine.
And my time to shine is right. That's right. Oh my gosh. That's a bad thought. I got to get that out of my head for now.
For now.
For now.
Well, so I know earlier we were kind of chatting before we started recording. We were like, we're going to cover all this, but this has turned into the best conversation.
We always have a lot of fun because there's so much to talk about.
I have had an experience recently where we've been talking about guides more. I've been getting more active with them because I just realized I was like, oh, I haven't really been working with them, and I should, because why would you not? I would, if you really know that your dreams are kind of acting out, and you don't, there's a time and place, right? Like if everyone could just drop everything and go to a therapist, that's ideal. But the reality is we don't always have that time or resources. No. So things might just be a little bit rough waters for a moment. Right. Dreams are going to get weird and all that. But the guides are also in that domain more than they are us.
Yes.
I have asked, hey, I really need to sleep tonight. Like, help me calm down before bed. Help me get to a place where maybe there's a chance of that.
Yes.
And I do think that helps. And if it doesn't, what's the harm in trying?
Well, exactly. And I agree 100%. And I've been in those same state of minds. And I want to, along that same thought too, I want to add one little step here. When you do ask your guides, and I do that too. I have a perfect example. My car was acting up last night after I was leaving my class, and it's 9:30 at night. And one of my primary guides is Brutus. Car just got out of the shop. I was driving my husband's car, and we had just threw all these codes, and I'm like, ah! So I pull back into my safety zone, which is work, and all of a sudden I'm starting to compile all these thoughts, like, well, if I can't ever leave again, at least I'm at work. Like, really, I live like 10 miles down the road. I think I can walk there by morning, right? But we think we hyper think. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Brutus, you got to get me out of this. You got to get me out of here. What if Brian's son asleep? He just got back from work. Blah blah blah. Help me. And so I'm really just come on. I'm always talking to you. You got to listen to me. Make this happen. Oh, there's Brian on the phone. And all of a sudden, no more Brutus, because I got what I asked for.
Right.
So when you get what you asked for, and even the times you don't get what you asked for, show gratitude. Something's in the works. Maybe you need a lesson that's different than the one that's going to, accompany, your answer. But we recognize that if we ask with such, almost primal instinct, thank them. Say, hey, cool, you did it. I appreciate you. Because that's good for us. That's good value for us to give to the spirit world. Okay.
Absolutely. And it's we recognize that the guides are there with us regardless, whether we're
Yes.
grateful to them or not, whether we believe in them or not. They're
Yes.
just there. And so there is something, I always think about this, where I think, of the 8 billion people on the earth, or whatever the number is nowadays,
Mhm.
8, whatever. If I can be one of the ones that like can celebrate my team, I feel like, this is such a human thought, but it's like, that's got to be a luxury that most guides don't have, to be believed in, to be thanked,
I
like
agree.
and so, I think that's kind of like a cool club that I can
It
allow my
is.
guides to be a part of, which
That's
is,
right.
oh yeah, we get pats on our back because Terri and Sterling believe in us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, why wouldn't we try to give that to them?
And I'm glad you said that too, because there are many times people misconstrue when we say they don't have egos, they still have feelings. They have
Mm-hmm.
they don't get their feelings hurt, but they still have they're still reacting to you and interacting with you on a more human basis, a more human level. So show gratitude, give them the high five that you can't feel on the other side. Let them know of the appreciation, because what you're really doing is you're allowing yourself to believe in something that's much more unique than maybe some other people would see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, absolutely. Thank you, team.
Man, that's awesome. And it makes me feel, just makes me feel like, okay, things are gonna be okay, because at least they're there.
Oh,
I know I
yes.
can be a basket case, but they probably aren't.
Yeah, I know. That's what I felt last night. I try to be a fairly put together person, but I'm very
Yes.
intense energy as well. And so I'm like, oh no. And it's like, and then it was funny because I was sitting there, and I did have a ride coming in 40 minutes. It takes a little time to get up, get changed, and because he was exhausted. And so my guide, I Brutus, said, "Don't you have a lot of text messages you need to go through?" And I'm like,
That's so funny. Wow.
Okay. And so I answered my
Wow.
text. I did. For the next 40 minutes, I answered about 30 of them, and I thought, cool. I did it. That made
Wow.
sense.
Yeah.
So yes, I love the
I
world
love
that
that.
we live in, and the world that we are part of. Another world.
Do you think that the guides use dreams much? Because I get the feeling the answer is no.
I don't feel that they do. I know, I've never seen Brutus in one of my dream states. I really haven't. I mean, now I've had other guides come to me that I may never have met before, or I'm curious about who this person is in the dream state, that I could probably kind of come to an idea of, or maybe even a conclusion that they are another guide. But typically, the guides I work with, I've never seen them action packed in a dream.
You and I are very close at
Mm-hmm.
this point, family.
Yes.
What are and again, I've never seen your guides. And have you ever seen mine? Because I don't know that that's like a thing that happens much.
There are times when I can get visuals of guides, of other people's guides. Mhm. But I don't feel a need to, and I don't request that I see them entirely. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Totally.
So where I know you've got some strong guides, and I know you'll have some male and female around you as guides, and you have a warrior as a guide, I recognize that they're yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, they're not mine. So it's kind of like, more than anything, the goal is for you to see them.
Thank you. And that's because my point with that was, we are as close as two metaphysical people can be.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is not like a block party.
No.
Where I see all your people. And so that, I know
No.
I've said this until I'm blue in the face on this podcast, but it never hurts again. When people try to tell you who your guards are, their names, their occupations, I am so wary of that, man. I just don't like it. I've never talked to somebody who is telling me that this is information that's been given to them. I've never felt that it's right. Like, and then I wondered, oh, have you just set yourself against somebody knowing all these details about your guides because I don't have all of those details about mine? I wondered, I was like, is this an ego thing? Have you not done the guide work? And so you assume no one can.
Right.
But the reality is, it's like when I have asked about that, it's almost like I've got guides that won't let me engage with them all the time. So they're telling me no. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know how somebody can go and dig into someone else's energy and say, oh, here's what you got. Da, 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 da. It's
very
just don't.
difficult. Yes. And I get it all day and every day. You do too. Now, there are times that I will see energies because I've seen it. You know, I had one the other day. I said, I don't know exactly who this is, if this is your guide or a loved one, but you have a priest by you. And he said, that's my uncle. I said, great, because there's a priest, but I wonder if the monk behind him is your relative too. And he said, that's really weird because I think that's my team. That's my guide. But I don't have enough feedback to give all of the information. Now, I may give a little bit of an understanding because I'm setting them in a direction. But along with that, I also want to share with you, you know, because you have that, and I agree, that's one of your pet peeves. The other pet peeve that tags along with that is when all of a sudden I hear people say, and they do it regularly, oh, look at that. Queen Elizabeth is your guide. Oh my gosh. Look, there's another one. And every person of adornment in any, you know, history book is now yours. I am not saying it's not possible because they belong to someone. And I do feel that people work with Mother Mary often. And there are times I work with Mother Mary, but I don't feel that everybody has a designer label guide.
That's hilarious. I've never heard that in my life, but that is I
just heard it myself. That's why I said it.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, yeah. And so with that said, and with the guide work, right? Because we recognize we have them, thank goodness. But, you know, I don't know that they're the most, they don't need to be like, no, look at me, know what I am. I think they'd be really happy if you just would listen to them.
Right. You just would pay attention to what they're trying to help you with. Right.
Yeah. Like they would much be happier if we didn't date the person we dated when they told us not to than if we know what they're wearing.
Yes.
So I try to remember that for myself as well.
And again, I'm not saying that the heavy hitters don't work with us. No, that's very important because I've seen Michael around several people. I've seen them work with them. I've seen angels just in abundance. But what I want to say, and I've heard it so many times, either people in past lives they'll make you think, oh my God, you know how many people you were? You were all the heavy hitters. Well, you're not always going to be the heavy hitter. You're going to be the person that walks the ducks, which is me. And I'm happy to be the person that walks the ducks because they're kind of cute. And I probably had leprosy too. I mean, let's go after it all full force, right? But recognize that not all the time, in all ways, can we be those energies or have those energies on our team.
If you ever do have, because I would, and I want to kind of tie this to the dream thing too. If I ever felt that I had a dream where I was visited by someone else's guide, I would assume one thing kind of strongly. And if this is off, tell me. I would assume that person that they are sort of custodial with is needing something important.
Yep.
Because I do not think that they do that.
No, they wouldn't.
They're going to get help.
Right.
Because it's not enough. Something's wrong. No. So that's one thing that I would say too, is if a guide ever were to show themselves to me, I would be hyper focused and try to figure out what has gone so badly that now we're sort of out. We're like, okay, us and our team, we can't help Terri. Come try to get her to see right.
Exactly.
Don't let her make this choice. Don't let her, whatever. You know what I mean?
And you know, this is interesting. I just had an epiphany and I've been doing this a lot. And I just had an epiphany. Do you know, it's never once come to my understanding or my questioning or my conscious mind. My husband must have guides. Think of that. And I've never seen them. How cool is that?
Oh my God, that's well. You knew he was to get into a subsection.
Yes,
but you knew he had bear energy.
Oh yes, very much bear energy, and I also know that he was a Viking in a past life. But as far as his team,
that's so funny.
And again, it's very interesting because as much as I love that man, I didn't feel that it was really my business to go digging into his guides.
Wow.
I mean,
That's so
that's
interesting.
curious. He better not have any hut goddesses. That's all I can say.
Right. It's Aphrodite. No.
I'm not sharing my bed with anybody.
Wow. Well,
But it's
how
interesting.
fascinating.
I just realized that. I mean, wow, that's pretty cool. But it makes
Well,
sense.
I mean,
to
if you
me.
want to take a second, just out of fun and curiosity, do you feel that it would be a male or female as his main?
See,
What?
that's
Oh, no.
hard because then you're putting emotion,
Mm-hmm.
you're putting insecurity, you're putting all the things that make us human.
Yep.
And in order for me to answer that as accurate as possible, I would have to answer it very quickly. And my very quick responses is he's definitely got a female.
That's so funny. Because see, my human in me, when I tried to feel it out, I got so nervous to be wrong, and then it dulled my. I was like, it could be either. You know what I mean? So
Well,
you're right. You should have been
that's
faster
okay
for me.
too. And it's because we realize that we've got more than one. So
Mhm.
probably and I'm not saying that we could be 50% right or wrong because we have a lot of energies that are non-human. And then we have
Mhm.
energies that are just energy balls. We have aliens. We have a whole host of energies that don't really always encompass the human spirit.
Mhm.
So it's
Oh man.
it's quite remarkable. But hey, I just have to find out. I'm gonna have to ask him if he knows. That's a burning question now.
I love it. Is he home?
He is. He's taking a nap.
Oh.
We work opposite hours, and then when he's
Well,
home,
then
he's
let's
sleeping.
get in that dream. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know, that's right. Good luck in the dream. That's right. I
We
might
gotta
go
figure
sit
it
on
out.
that's what I could do. I could go ahead and gently sit on the bottom of the bed.
Yeah.
And then get back up and go woo, and then go out the door. That might be kind of fun. No, just kidding.
The irony though is he is so not metaphysical. Like
he isn't, but he's also very intuitive.
Very, but I mean to say, like, if he's working on something, he's not going to say, "Oh, my guides should help me."
No, typically no.
You
That's
know
not
what I
his
mean?
energy. No.
And so that is very funny though, because that doesn't preclude him from having them. And what about your son?
He doesn't outwardly talk to his guides like I do, but he knows he has them and he communicates. And he's got a team that's a little bit different than what I would want.
Yes, I agree. It's almost like he's got this is my gut that I've felt sometimes. He has very litigious, rule-oriented, we're going to help you not get in trouble because you're going to do this stuff anyway.
Feels like a dominion of sorts. It's just...
What do you mean?
I just feel like there is just a very big contrast between what I see as my team and his team. I feel his team come because almost like they have made a contract.
Yeah.
Very contractual.
Well, some of those contracts were created relatively recently.
Yes.
So there's there's that as well.
Yes.
But with everyone knowing and wanting it, Taylor included.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And and I'm a very how do I put it? I'm a mom. And so as a mom, I'm like, I don't know if I like all your guides, after we've had conversations, but the flip side of that, I also believe that, that I don't have all the answers, especially the closer it gets to me, the fuzzier it can be, because then I put in the human emotions.
Absolutely.
And so I make no judgment. I figure that people will take on who they need to as guides. And if someone believes that they have Bob Hope as their primary, then Bob Hope it is. I'm not going to go tell them no. And
would you say that you and I have similar guide systems?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's because he's a very unique individual. The guide
absolutely.
systems have a tendency to be relatively similar.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because speaking of my son, I've connected at times through channeling into his team, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not afraid of them. I just wouldn't invite them to my house.
So fun. The irony being they're there a lot, obviously.
They're already there. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
But I'm not afraid, and that's the thing that's truly, are there things in this lifetime, in this world, that we should be afraid of? Well, certainly. I mean, that's just being, realistic. But being afraid of things that we don't understand, or being afraid of most everything in the metaphysical world, is really not necessary. We're going to see things that don't make sense. Yes. We're going to see things that don't necessarily agree with the belief system. Yes. We're going to have energies around us that we probably wouldn't, we'd never be friends with if they were real in the day-to-day life. So, it's when you have a curiosity and a wide berth of understanding of what can be, or what is, or what, I don't even want to say what should be. It's just whatever is around. You start seeing things in a different light. And, it's just, I don't know how to put it in better words than that. There's a lot of light in our world. There's some dark too, but there's a lot of light.
And out of curiosity with, for instance, obviously your two parents would have had guides.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they did.
And so does there come a point, obviously you have the ones that you're born and die with, right? You can't,
Yes.
those are there. Those are with you. Mm-hmm. But there has, just like we talked about recently, where, Gladys was scared away, essentially.
When I was writing my book, she screamed.
And there has to be a version where I have a set of guides that are comfortable with my energy, or they wouldn't be there.
Right.
And my energy just happens to be murder-free at the moment, right? But if
now,
I
for
were
the
to
listening audience, she has not done anything in this lifetime. Okay, there we go.
But it's like, if I were to somehow break, my energy were to become so different than as I am now, I would make an argument to suggest that the guides that I have now would be less comfortable working with me.
I would think so.
And so then I would assume, if I believe that there is a goodness to that process, which I do believe that there is, I don't think guides come in to make it worse.
Right.
But I think I would wind up with a guide system that was darker in its understanding, darker in why would I break and go do something so horrendous, and how not judge me for it, but understand how to try to get me back into whatever my agenda was for this world, right? Because if I decided I want to go murder and experience that lifetime and become the villain, well, then there wouldn't be a reason to guide me away from that. That would be my original agenda.
Exactly. And I agree with that. And so with that same type of thought, my parents probably had guides that were working on their behalf to help them to achieve the darkness. Because again, it's free will. And if we have guides of the light, we could very easily, based on what we want, because it's free will, have guides of the darkness.
And okay, so now that makes me curious, because I do have a faith system that our original, the ones that stay with us, our permanent ones, that they are intending for us to,
evolve.
Evolve, right. So then is there a point where, I wonder, was there ever a point in, like, say, your father's timeline where the guides just knew that there would be a dormancy of their activity? There's no one was going to listen, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But when somebody starts to break back into the good, do you think they now's our window? We may not get done what we need to do, but we're going to try to remind him to be human, remind him to be of love.
And
or is that just not?
I agree with that. That is another way of explaining it. I do agree with that. I have a different way of explaining it that I understand. And the way I understand it is, think of each lifetime as it's a dress rehearsal. You've got to play. You're in the middle of the play, and the play is just playing out. It's who you are in the life. And yes, sometimes you're going to forget your lines. Sometimes you're going to have someone stray in, stray away. So if every lifetime is just a play that's being enforced, then you can see where there would be more neutrality as well, right? Because it is just a play. In a lot of ways, it's kind of the illusion of life, right? That these are to help you to see. We're progressing through the good. We're progressing through the bad. Maybe some souls say, I don't really need to know about that. That I don't want that kind of play. I want all the plays of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Don't give me Freddy Krueger's, because that's not what I need. And so is there a potential for there to be guides that just kind of sit back and kind of watch things play out? Well, if it's scripted and everyone is taking part in a play, you're more apt to do something theoretically that would be, not acceptable in a different conscious state. So I don't want to make it as light as that, because that's kind of just a easy
Well,
way out.
no, I mean, I definitely understand exactly what you mean.
Good.
Absolutely, because, but I do recognize, but I'm so glad. I mean, that's fascinating because I agree. The sad part to me is, as soon as you said that, it's so funny because, we can know our lines. The odds of that are very low, but we could. But you're still having to act with other people. So if they
Yes.
mess up their lines,
Yes.
we still have to act with that, in the same play. And so there's so much free will, even when we say, oh, it's a predestined, we're here, there's an agenda, but it's like the guides might just be trying to remind us our lines, and we still might mess up the play. And then maybe we have to do that play again.
Right.
Because maybe there is a version of like, all right, you got to at least get 70% of the lines right.
Well, exactly. Well,
like, what's the,
right. Well, otherwise, we're going to have to redo this play.
Yeah.
And and again, I have to be realistic, because of my upbringing, being very, very different. I guess we will put it mildly. I have a different way of looking at things, because if I look at it from the state of horror that a lot of people look at it as, then I probably wouldn't have healed. I probably would be, homeless and, shooting something up my arm. But realistically, I was able to see it as this is just an experience of life, and it wasn't good. I didn't want it, and I didn't want it for anybody else to have to succumb to it. But if you look at it like you are in the midst of a play, now I'm not saying the responsibility is not there. I mean, we are here in a real life situation. Killing people is a bad deal, okay? And I recognize it. I don't take that frivolously. But in hindsight, when I look at it through what I feel, I look at it as I had surrendered to an experience that was very unhealthy. I was part of it. I'm not a victim, but I was in the regards of kind of stayed there. That was what I had to do. And so I don't look at it as my tragedy. I look at it as the observer in this really pathetic play. Really.
Well, and art plays, what do they call it? They're split up into, chapters.
Yes.
And so there is a reality of, okay, well, if this is the chapter that needs to occur for all of the healing and the help in all of the other chapters, because your play is about healing.
Yes.
But there had to have been that first chapter of destruction to put it all into perspective and to help you hone your skills.
And that's why when I wrote a book, I made very short action chapters.
I love that. Wow.
Because I didn't want people to you could feel the intensity, but I didn't want you to become depressed because you were dragged through it. That's the difference.
Well, you, like you always say, love first. You wrote it with that, with I felt almost a protection of the reader, because I know you personally. So the second time I read it, I was pretty, honestly, because it's just so different. First time I read it, it hit me hard because of the details, but not hard because I didn't know you well.
Right.
And the second time I read it, I could easily, now that we've had so many conversations over wine and I've dug into that because I'm curious, I recognized, oh my gosh, you really are guiding them through the story, but being very protective of them.
Yes.
And I love you for that. That's amazing.
There's bad things that happen in our lives, and we can make some terrible decisions during those bad events that affect us for a lifetime after. And so
no one's going to stop the play.
Exactly.
So that's scary too. You got to roll. Man, I love that analogy so much. That's great.
Yeah. It's an easy way for me to wrap my head around it. And it keeps, again, I mean, yes, are there things that could become triggers? Yes, I mean, obviously, I'm still human in a human form. And so there's triggers of the past, just like there would be for you, things that do make us, remember or saddened by or things. But realistically, they serve no purpose now. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, none of those things happen now. Those things are of the past. So I have to look at them as events from the chapter in the story basically called life, the play of life. And so I keep them in perspective and also at arm's length.
Well, and I think there's something too, because if you can keep those chapters in perspective of them being chapters, the relief that I felt from my past as I continue to get older is really, I just find ways to forgive my bad behavior during those chapters.
Yes.
because I recognize like, oh my gosh, and I'm very self-critical. So as I keep growing, I'm like, oh yeah, you would have had issues with honesty. You would have had a desire to hide and conceal who you are. You don't have to look back on your school years and think, why were you always like that?
Right.
Because that was a question until maturity says, oh yeah, it's okay. You weren't crazy. You weren't
Exactly.
super weird. You're a little bit weird, but it's, and that's really the only way that you should go and look at those chapters, is to look and see like you weren't so bad. You did the best, maybe.
You did the best you can. And we may not be able to go and rewrite the chapters. We may not be able to go back and make everything better. The Band-Aids come much later. But even something, and I won't go into detail, but you gave me an analogy that really affected me the other day about a trip to the airport. And it really
Yeah.
bothered me to a large degree. It surprised me how much it bothered me, actually. And so what I did, I went into meditation. So now that anytime I see that, and I've probably done that about half a dozen times, I see that scenario of that trip.
And I'm not shy about it. So and because I want to say it out loud, because I think there are people who deal with this
Okay,
stuff.
good. I'd like for you to do that. Yes, I'm
Absolutely. So I'm adopted, and my parents were very punitive, and they were very tit for tat, and everything that you had need to be paid for. Right. And so one of the payments that was existing at a very young age, I don't know why they thought this would work. But if my room wasn't clean, or if I hadn't cleaned up the play area, my dad's old office, or if I hid something and said I didn't. So anything, and all of this is below 3 because we moved to Colorado after that. So I know the time frame. I have a pretty good memory. But they would make me pack a bag, and they would tell me that they were taking me back to China. I'm adopted from there. And my parents were in the airline industry. So we were always at the airport dropping my mom off. I mean, so there was an awareness of where I was going. There was an awareness that I would not see my family again, because I'd messed up so badly that I couldn't live here anymore. And then the reason it came up the other day was because you and I were talking about doing international travel. And I said, I don't know if it's this. My ego wants it to not be. My ego wants to say, oh, I've managed that. I've mastered that. But the reality is maybe I haven't. There might be some anxiety of, oh, if I leave, will I be able to come back?
Well, and you know what? I had to turn that into, and I'm glad that I'm glad that you didn't really get the effects of this. Well, maybe you should have. But so every time I got that vision in my head, which I found disturbing, I took you for ice cream instead. So you've had plenty of helpings of ice cream.
I've had so much ice cream.
I mean, really, we've gotten in the car so many times figuratively over that experience, and went and got ice cream and came back, because I just found that, and that is, again, that's a very punitive, very difficult thing to put aside. And even though now that you're a grown woman, and you're extremely independent, and you're extremely ambitious, you've got all the beautiful traits of a wonderful human being, we see that life has triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And that does happen. When we say we keep them at arm's length, we do, because there are triggers. Yes. But I do want you to know that I've taken you out for ice cream many times from that trip since we talked about that.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that did, you know how I am. I don't want anyone to be, but.
Well, no, sometimes we hear things because what they do is they need to be said. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
You need to say that. I needed to hear it. I needed to feel it, because will it do something different for me? Will it make me more empathetic? Will it make me see that there are little nuances of action? And that wasn't a little, because that was repetitive. And even if it was once, that's a pretty scary thing for a child. But we see that, and we know how we can help others, because we don't want people to feel that lost or that afraid.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it actually was important for me to, and you got a different flavor every time we went. So I'm going to tell you, you've had your fill of ice cream.
I love
just
you.
For the record.
Thank you. I love you so much.
I love you so much. And so, again, what we said, we never know what will tweak us, what will trigger reactions. And going back to dream states, some of those dreams can be triggered by some action. So that's when I always change it. I always try to do my part to dream weave it, go into it, and take the boogeyman out. It's rare. It's very rare that I have dreams of my parents anymore. It's very rare. But when in the rare time that I do, if I see them coming in, as an example, say for instance, I'm in this house and I look and they're walking in the door, then I just go lock it. And I'm like, no thanks.
No thanks.
And I
I'm
change
good.
the dream.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
And it's becoming very, very much what I do. So it's a lot easier for me to change a bad dream to a good dream.
Yeah, I should have. I need to remember that because last night was just dream heavy. It was so much.
Uh-oh.
But I just think I need more sleep.
Well,
So
that will
that's
do
probably
it
part
too.
of it.
You need your deep REM, even though you're active with dreams.
Yeah. Well, my dear, we've gotten close. I wanted to say real fast. I wanted to ask you, and I always want to be able to give you your evening to yourself too. That's why I
You're
just
so
realized
sweet.
we go hard in the paint so fast.
Well, we're going to go pick up our car again. I was telling my husband,
no.
Brian, I said, I feel like we need to exchange greeting cards with this shop because we've been there. We've got 3 vehicles, that my car, his car, and our son's car that seems to be kind of under our tutelage.
Oh my goodness.
And so we're always there, it seems like. And so we were just there the day before yesterday and back again. So we're going to exchange greeting cards this year.
Lord have mercy. Well, I mean, that's a good relationship to develop, though.
You bet it is. That's exactly right.
I have one question on behalf of my friend Jake because he, we recognize this is kind of new, the thought of all of these things, but he collects art.
I love it. Yes.
And he feels very strongly about it. And he started collecting work from Urte because of a woman who passed across the street from him. And and he kind of just wants to know if she's proud of what he's grown. He kind of wants to know, does she approve of what he's done with that? I don't know anything about her other than I think her name is Alice or Allison.
I get the impression that she's very pleased. She's a little surprised because she felt that she didn't make that big of a impression to people. She felt that she wasn't that known, that thought of. And she remembers him as a little boy, and he would be shy at times and then a little precocious at other times. And she just feels that was such a loving gesture for him to find that as a way to kind of think about her. And she doesn't want to use the word of honor her, but to conclude her. She's saying, what a wonderful way to include me. I feel that she did have a very, and in some ways, I don't want to say a sedentary life, but a little bit more quiet. And I feel like this is her kind of celebration of life is through the art. So yes, she's very proud of that and hoping that he'll continue.
Yeah, he just got another beautiful piece the other day. So
awesome.
I said I would give an inquiry regarding that.
Makes perfect sense. Yes. What a wonderful thing to do. Isn't it remarkable that we can find things where things that really touch us, not just triggers, but touch us in ways that it takes us forward. And we do things in our life that we hadn't really set out to do, but we find a path of it because it makes us feel good and wholesome and connected to things that really matter. So that's really cool.
Well, and I have no relationship with art really, so I admire always him for his taste and his fashion and his eye for art. But, being around him and seeing all of the art, he has Dolly lithographs, like a million of them.
Wow.
And just for a whole night, we just drank margaritas and set up this wall.
How beautiful.
But I want, I'm metaphysical, and I wondered, is not concern, I mean, is there an impact of energy in a room or a house or anything where somebody sat and did that work? Like art is an intensive thing. And we recognize that effort being laid in place leaves energy.
Yes.
So, now there's his secondary office, it's all just Dolly. And he didn't ask me to ask this. I'm asking for me, I guess, too. What does that do to a room?
Well, it brings on the essence of the person that it is a reminder of. I love artwork, but I get overwhelmed when I go to an art gallery. Because for me, I have a tendency to go into the picture and walk around and see what's there and look at all the little pieces of it. And it becomes a bit overwhelming for me. So I would have to surmise that with me having that kind of very extensive response to it, that there are those that just feel a little bit of that at least and would go there and kind of reach into, how did the artist feel when the artist was doing this work? Was the artist lonely? Was the artist happy? Was the artist depressed? What is the landscape of the picture? Where is it? What type of, I would look at it from all different levels, and that's secondary. What's secondary to that is what type of painting, whether it's abstract work, it's, landscape scenery, whatever it may be. I always feel the artwork first. And I feel
like where the artist was.
Yes, when they were working it up.
What's actually there is secondary. Wow.
Yes.
So, and I don't know anything about Dolly, and I don't want to besmirch him, but wouldn't that then be somewhat important that the person that you're collecting, that they be a good person, or that they not be so, like, if there was anger, you know what I mean? Like, that's something I thought of. Now, I feel very capable of guarding against that. I know that he's very capable. Yes. But things like we were talking about hanging a gallery wall in the bedroom, and I felt I was like, that initially, obviously, the thought of it's beautiful, but I was like, that's a lot of energy that's not of your own.
And I agree with that. I do have a little bit of a different type of feel for that sort of thing. I have in my bedroom, I have all my family pictures. And I will tell you, sometimes I can't look at my family while I'm in there. I'm like, because this is my bedroom. And if I'm looking at it going, oh my God, all these people are like in here with us. But I will tell you, I love to look at artwork, but I am very particular about where it's hung, how I see it. Does it make me happy? If I look at something and then my first reaction isn't a pleasantry, I don't hang it because I'm such a visual person that I can feel all the energies in it. And I got to make sure that it's something very optimal. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be able to. So to answer your question, if there was a lot of oppression in the artwork, or, the artwork was all stolen by, whomever later, Saddam or whomever, I may take a big exception to having even any type of replicas of it, because I would still feel the energy and the synergy of it. So the answer to your question is proceed gently with a gallery where you're going to be spending a lot of time, because it does have a reflect on your energy. It does reflect there.
Well, and the last question, I guess, is with an artist itself, like Urte or Dolly or anything.
Yep.
We recognize that when we talk about our grandmother, it's almost like for that spirit, it's kind of like, oh, someone, like a little bit of a ear perk up.
Yes.
But with an artist, there is an assumption that they're being probably spoken about all the time.
Absolutely.
As it's being looked at, as it's being honored. Do you think that there's kind of a numbness as for like for Dolly or Urte? They probably don't notice when someone's just talking about their work.
I don't feel that
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, right? I don't feel that they do. I also feel that there's just so much energy in any type of painting. Even those
got a weird feeling.
What's that?
I just got a very weird feeling. I just got a feeling that there is actually almost like that there must have been so much else that they were than their art, that it might even make them feel not seen.
Could be.
Like, well, no one will ever remember that I was a grandfather. No one will. So I wonder if there's even like that they would ignore it because they're like, this art wasn't even all that I was. It's all that everyone remembers me for, but it's not who I was.
It's just one part of their life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How interesting.
It's fascinating. Again, that's why I don't play with tarot cards. I've told you before. Yeah. I jump right in the picture. I look out and I wave, hello. And so I take pictures very seriously. I'm very guarded when it comes to pictures because I don't want things that I have to, an example, growing up in my house, we had all these ridiculous religious pictures. And I'm sorry,
the irony.
Yeah,
the irony.
The irony.
That's ridiculous because of who they were as people.
Yes, yes. And I'm thinking, dear God in heaven, literally, why are you all on my wall? You're not doing anything.
Yeah, you're not.
And it's like,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah. So I do have a different kind of lopsided opinion of artwork.
Well, thank you. You're the only, I love asking. I mean, you're my mentor in a lot of ways. I'm like, what do you think? What are your,
I'm sure it's beautiful, and I'm sure that it is reflective of good things in his energy. I don't see any darkness in his energy, so you're not going to be, plastering on the walls, artwork from, various, crimes of humanity,
Right.
there.
Right. Yeah, and it calls to us too. I doubt he'd be attracted to something of that nature.
No, well,
we would naturally be against it.
I would think so. And if he doesn't, well, then let me know. And
I love you so much.
We'll find a way to visit him in lucid dreams.
No. He's probably like, all right, this is a lot.
Yeah, he's probably like, oh, my ears are ringing. Get over this already, ladies.
I love you so much.
I love you so much. I've had a blast. Hey,
Me
you know
too.
what might be cool?
What?
Next time, let's talk about first aid.
Yes. Oh my God, we didn't even get it.
Ooh.
Yes.
Now, we won't tell the listeners what that means. It's not Band-Aids, or is it?
Different kind of Band-Aid. I love you. I love you.
I love you.
We're going to talk first aid.
Yes. Oh,
next.
Yes.
Time.
Let's see where that takes us.
And until next time, Terry, I love you to the moon and back. Thank you so much for being here with me always.
Oh, I love what we do. And listeners and those out there that are, wake up. Come on, wake up. You got to hear this part. If you've got a question, if you've got a comment, please let us know. We want to know you exist, right? So reach out, say hey, say hi. And even
if it's a personal question about loved ones, about jobs,
yes.
Give us the opportunity to sort of be of benefit because you guys take your time to listen to us.
And it's, yes, it's broadcasted, but the bottom line is we're not going to give him your phone number, your social security number, and your full name. We're not in the city you live in. We're not doing that. Well, maybe if you're not nice.
And the fun part about energy is we don't really need your name.
That's right. We don't need your name.
So you can use a fake name. We'll still be able to connect with you.
Yes, do that. That would be great. Then we can go, I think this isn't the real name.
I know, God. It'd be weird. They say this, but the name's Ollie.
Yeah. Imagine that.
That's strange. Anyways, I don't know why I said that.
That was interesting.
Love you.
Love you.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.